The movie opens with psychiatrist Dr. Malik reviewing his patient Malcolm Rivers' documents, recordings, and files. According to the records, Malcolm was born to a prostitute and had a traumatic childhood. His mother abandoned him at a local motel when he was 9 years old, and he grew up in an orphanage. An adult Malcolm then brutally murdered 6 people in an apartment complex on May 10, 1998, which was also his birthday. The crime was so heinous that the courts imposed the death penalty, and he's set to be executed tomorrow. In the next scene, a district attorney receives an urgent call from a colleague, informing him of a new court hearing scheduled for midnight. It turns out Malcolm's defense lawyer has discovered his diary, which he claims can turn the case around. But this only enrages the attorney, and he questions how such a brutal murderer could be granted a retrial mere hours before his execution. The scene then shifts to a motel, where the owner, Larry Washington, is watching TV, while it rains outside. Suddenly, a man named George York bursts in, holding his bloodied wife, Alice, revealing they had been in an accident. In a flashback, we see the couple driving in heavy rain, with their young son, Timothy, in the back seat. Everything seems to be fine, until one of the front tires abruptly bursts, startling the family. George then quickly pulls over, and eventually discovers that it turns out to be a shoe stuck in the tire. The scene then cuts to a further flashback, where we see a former prostitute, Paris, Nevada, driving on the same road. She is searching for her lighter, but she accidentally causes all her belongings, along with her shoe, to fly out on the road. Later, George is busy fixing the tire while Alice stands next to him holding an umbrella. Timothy is playing inside the car, and he soon gestures at his mother to come toward him. Alice tries to approach him. But then all of a sudden, in a subsequent flashback, we see a man named Edward Dakota, driving the actress Caroline Susan, in the limousine. Caroline's phone battery suddenly dies, so she asks Ed to look for a charger in the suitcase lying next to him. But he soon gets distracted from the road and ends up hitting Alice. A horrified Ed wants to help the poor woman, but Caroline insists they should drive away instead. Ed ignores her and gets out of the car anyway to check on Alice. Not far away, Paris is driving along the same road but discovers that it has been washed away. She tries to turn back, but ends up crashing into a lamppost instead. Meanwhile, Ed gathers everyone in his limousine, and takes them to the nearby motel. The owner Larry tries to call an emergency service, but learns that there's no signal due to the rain, so he reveals that there is a hospital 30 miles from the motel. Despite the bad weather, Ed immediately volunteers to drive, as he feels responsible for the woman's condition. Caroline is against the idea and refuses to get out of the vehicle, but Ed throws her out and drives away. After a few kilometers, Ed comes across Paris, whose car has broken down. She asks for a ride, and he agrees without hesitation. Paris then warns Ed that they can't go any further because the road is flooded, but he ignores her and continues driving. But soon, he realizes she was correct when his car ends up sinking into the flood. Just then, another car arrives from the opposite direction, driven by a couple named Lou and Ginny Eziana. Ed asks for their help in heading to the hospital, but the couple reveals that the road in the opposite direction is washed out even more. With no other option, they all decide to return to the motel and stay there tonight. Before leaving, Ed takes a revolver from the glove compartment of his limo. Upon returning to the motel, he informs George that they are stuck here for now, and cannot get out tonight. Meanwhile, Larry checks in all the guests, and then directs them to their respective rooms. A little later, a cop named Rhodes arrives at the motel with a prisoner in his car. He asks Larry to let them stay until the storm passes, promising that the prisoner will be tied up. Ed then explains about the woman in critical condition, and requests that an ambulance be dispatched. Rhodes tries to call for help using the police radio, but his efforts are unsuccessful. With no other option, Ed decides to handle the situation himself, and uses a needle and thread to stitch up Alice's wounds. This finally stops the bleeding, and her condition begins to improve. Meanwhile, Ed notices that the little boy, Timothy, appears strange, and hasn't said a word since the accident. He asks George if the kid is okay, to which the latter says yes. George reveals that Timothy's real father, who had serious temper issues, left 2 years ago, and the boy has not spoken much since then. On the other hand, Larry takes Rhodes and his prisoner, Robert Maine, to their assigned room. Rhodes then chains the criminal to the toilet to ensure he cannot escape. Sometime later, Caroline is seen practicing her speech, unaware of a mysterious shadowy figure lurking behind her. The hotel phone suddenly beeps, indicating that it has received a signal. Overjoyed, she rushes outside into the pouring rain and uses the shower curtain to shield herself. She begins wandering around, trying to find a stronger signal on her phone. But then all of a sudden, despite the heavy storm, Ed hears some strange noises and goes outside. He discovers a broken shower curtain hook and, after walking a short distance, comes across another. The trail leads him to the laundry room, where he notices several washing machines running, and hears something spinning in one of them. Ed checks them one by one, and soon comes across a horrific sight: Caroline's blood-soaked clothes wrapped around her head. Rhodes and Larry also arrive at the scene, and both are equally stunned. The trio examines the washing machine, and discovers the key to room 10, which is Rhodes' room. Without wasting any time, they all head towards there and are shocked to discover that Robert has escaped. Ed then gathers everyone in the main hall, and tries to delicately explain what has happened. However, Larry ruins everything by blurting out that Caroline is dead, and the murderer has escaped. This causes panic to ensue, but Ed calms everyone down and reveals that he is a former cop. He then pulls out his gun, and decides to team up with Rhodes to track down the killer. During this, we see that the motel owner Larry doesn't seem to care, and instead sneaks into Caroline's room to steal her money. Meanwhile, the remaining guests continue to panic in the main room, especially Ginny Easiana, who suddenly gets up and leaves, saying she feels something bad is going to happen. Lou and Ginny rush into their room together, where the couple continues to argue. It is revealed that they recently married because Ginny claimed to be pregnant. However, here she finally admits that she is not pregnant, and that she lied to get him to marry her. This revelation enrages Lou, prompting Ginny to lock herself in the bathroom. Lou starts banging on the bathroom door, but Ginny tells him to leave her alone. But moments later, the banging finally stops, and everything falls eerily silent. A worried Ginny then tries to leave the bathroom, but to her shock, she notices the shadow of someone attempting to attack her with a knife. Ginny locks herself in the bathroom again, and then climbs out the window and falls right into Rhodes' hands. Ed and Rhodes enter the room, and they are shocked to discover Lou dead, having been stabbed several times. Elsewhere, Robert has managed to escape from the motel and runs toward the desert. He soon notices several buildings with lights on and rushes toward them. Robert then breaks down the door of one of them and enters inside. But to his utter shock, he realizes that he has strangely returned to the motel from which he had just escaped. This time, Ed and Rhodes catch up with him, and hand him a solid-ass whopping until he's knocked unconscious. They then tie him to a chair and ask Larry, who is holding a baseball bat, to watch him. Later, Ed and Paris return to Lou's room to take crime scene photos. While examining the dead body, Ed is shocked to find a key with the number 9 in Lou's hands. The two inform Rhodes about it, and then they notice Larry, who was supposed to be watching Robert, leaving his office. They immediately call him, and rush to find Robert, only to discover that he has been brutally killed, with the number 8 key nearby. His throat is impaled with the baseball bat, leading them to suspect Larry as the murderer. The motel owner denies killing anyone, but things only get worse when they discover Caroline's wallet on him. Realizing he cannot convince them, Larry holds Paris hostage. But then, a man's frozen body suddenly falls out of a refrigerator. Up next, Larry takes advantage of the situation and flees in his pickup truck. He begins driving toward the exit of the motel, but suddenly sees Timothy standing in his way, and George is run over and killed when he tries to save his stepson. The scene then cuts to Malcolm's trial, where Dr. Malik explains that, according to the law, one cannot execute someone who does not understand the charges against them. He presents Malcolm Rivers' personal diary, which contains entries written from the perspectives of several different people, and in different handwritings. This indicates that Malcolm suffers from a split personality disorder, which is why he has no memory of committing the crimes. Next, Malcolm is finally brought into the room, tied to a wheelchair, and not fully conscious. Back in the motel, the group ties Larry to a chair, convinced that he's the killer. In his defense, the man reveals that the dead body in the refrigerator was the real motel owner, also named Larry. He explains that he lost all his money in Las Vegas and fled from his creditors. When he ran out of gas, he arrived at this motel, and discovered the owner dead inside. Then, some guests arrived and asked for a room, so Larry pretended to be the owner as he was in desperate need of money. He placed the real owner's body in the refrigerator, hoping his family would return. But as more guests continued to arrive, Larry was unable to resist the temptation, and continued to impersonate the motel owner. Upon hearing this story, everyone considers to believe him, except for Rhodes, who still thinks Larry is the killer. But the group nonetheless decides to stay in the main room, and keep watch over one another. Later, while everyone is busy in conversation, Rhodes tries to check on Alice, but he's startled to find that she's dead. Moreover, there is a key with the number 6 under her pillow. This confused the entire group, and they begin to wonder where the other key could be. They then think about the dead George, and after moving the pickup truck, discover a key with the number 7 in George's pocket. This leaves them stunned, because no one could have known about the accident beforehand. Having had enough, Ed suggests that Paris, Ginny, and Timothy get into the car, and drive around in circles until dawn. However, for some reason, Rhodes insists that everyone should stay at the crime scene, and after Ginny and Timothy get into the car suddenly explodes. The group rushes to put out the fire, but they are shocked to see that Ginny and Timothy are missing. Strangely enough, George's body is nowhere to be found either. They then search the motel and discover that all of the bodies, Robert, Lou, Alice, and even Caroline's head, are gone. Realizing that they are doomed, Paris has a mental breakdown. She yells about how she wants to live, and that she's turning 30 next week. Hearing this, Larry points out that his birthday is next week too, and shockingly, even Rhodes and Ed say the same thing. Alarmed, they check the copies of the guests' IDs, and are stunned to discover that every single one of them was born on May 10th. At this moment, a lightning bolt suddenly strikes the roof of the motel, and the power goes out. Ed continues looking at the IDs, and notices that they are all named after states: Dakota, Rhode Island, Nevada, Washington, Carolina, Virginia, and Louisiana, New York, and Maine. Ed then enters a trance-like state, and begins hearing a voice speaking to him. Seconds later, he suddenly wakes up in a hearing room, where Dr. Malik and the others are sitting. The doctor then tells Ed that he missed his appointment, and asks where he was. In response, he recounts everything that happened at the motel. Upon hearing the story, Dr. Malik pulls out a picture of Malcolm and asks if he recognizes him, but Ed denies it. Another man then shows him photos of Malcolm's murders, but Ed is perplexed and has no idea what is going on. Dr. Malik reveals that Malcolm had a very difficult childhood, which led him to develop several split personalities. He then gives Ed a mirror, and we shockingly find out that he is none other than Malcolm. The doctor explains that Ed is just one of Malcolm's personalities, and not a real person. But despite having a completely different face, Ed refuses to believe in the theory. He begins recounting his life as Ed, talking about his home, family, and his job as a cop. However, Dr. Malik calmly explains that it's all a fantasy. In reality, all of the people at the motel are simply personalities created by Malcolm. It turns out that one of these personalities is particularly evil, and is responsible for the murders. The massacre at the motel is actually the evil personality trying to suppress the 9 others to gain complete control of the mind. Dr. Malik then assigns Ed a mission to find and kill this murderous personality. By doing so, Malcolm would regain his sanity in real life, and thus avoid the death penalty. Seconds later, Ed wakes up a short distance away from the motel. Meanwhile, Rhodes finds the switchboard, but there is nothing there. Paris, on the other hand, is searching for a flashlight in a police car, but she's shocked to find documents detailing the transportation of 2 prisoners, Robert and the damn Rhodes. A brief flashback then shows the same police car driving down the highway, carrying Robert and Rhodes dressed as prisoners. Rhodes takes out a small knife from his socks, and kills the officer from behind the seat, before taking his clothes. In the present, Paris opens the car's trunk and eventually discovers the real cop's body. Terrified, she runs back into the motel, calling for Ed and Larry. But she's soon confronted by Rhodes, who realizes that his cover is blown. Just then, Larry shows up and hits Rhodes with a fire extinguisher. Unfortunately, the criminal quickly recovers and shoots Larry in the chest, while Paris runs away from the scene. Later, while hiding, Paris finds Ed and explains everything to him. He calmly tells her to stay put, and assures her that everything will be fine. Ed then heads off to confront Rhodes, and when the two find each other, they engage in an intense gunfight. Rhodes shoots Ed several times, but soon runs out of bullets. Taking advantage of this, a wounded Ed shoots the criminal multiple times, until he eventually dies. In the aftermath, Paris rushes to Ed and assures him that she will get help. But it's already too late, and he soon passes away, leaving her devastated. As the storm finally subsides, Paris takes the pickup truck and drives away from the motel. The scene then cuts to real life, where Dr. Malik claims that the evil within Malcolm has been destroyed. This means that he's no longer a threat to society, and now only needs proper treatment. The judge is also convinced, and orders Malcolm to be committed to a mental institution under Dr. Malik's supervision. As Malcolm is driven to the institution with Dr. Malik, we get a glimpse into his mind, where Paris has returned to her hometown, and established an orange grove. One day, while she is working on her yard, she is shocked to discover the key to room number 1 buried underground. Just then, a figure armed with a crowbar emerges behind her, and it turns out to be little Timothy, who is still alive, and is the real killer personality. We then see a series of flashbacks that reveal how Timothy orchestrated all of the deaths at the motel, including faking his death. In the final scene, Malcolm does his best to suppress the boy's personality, but the boy kills Paris and takes over completely. When Dr. Malik opens the hatch to speak with Malcolm, he quickly strangles the doctor. And this is where the movie ends.